fact check your truth?
I don't. I don't.
I kind of weigh the pros and cons, what I'm reading, and then I go from there.
To tell you the truth, no. Yeah, there is something really powerful about the written word when it's like, when you hear something, you think, oh, well, there's always two sides in the truth. But when you read something, there's a lot more power to it.
I go and ask one of my friends. I go and ask, talk to one of my friends about it or text them.
And what if they don't know?
Like, if it's somebody that's posting it, I go and like message them.
You call them out on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Small kind.
Does it work?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes. And you know what? My son does it for me, and it's great.
And especially coming back to school after 24 years, everything I do, I need to check on.
And I'm a big fan of Snopes and other websites that are meant for fact-checking.
I don't know that I fact check everything, but I'm very suspicious of things that come along. And if I read something that just doesn't make sense to me, then I tend to look for more information or I just disregard it. Part of the problem is just too much.
This live broadcast and live stream of Kākou, Hawaiʻi's Town Hall, start now.
Aloha and welcome to the first Kākou, Hawaiʻi's Town Hall. Our live broadcast and live stream are coming to you from the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Multimedia Studio at PBS Hawaii in Honolulu. And tonight our topic is truth. Kākou means all of us, as in we're all in this together. We invited islanders with different backgrounds and different perspectives to join us for this town hall. Some we know, some we don't yet. And we're thrilled that all of you are here. Thank you so much. Today, people have access to more information and more variety of content than ever before. But are we more informed, better informed, or do we choose what we want to believe? Is the truth overrated or more elusive and more important than ever before? So my question to our gang tonight is, with all of the information bombarding you, are you getting the truth you need? Just raise your hand if you'd like to contribute. Who's going to be the first tonight? Are you getting truth? Okay, you're starting slow on me here. Might have to call on you. Are you finding the truth? I mean, you get lots of information. Steve?
I've been a journalist here. I've been a journalist here in Hawaii for 31 years. I see a number of other reporters around here, and our job is to bring the truth, or at least as much of the truth as we can. So the people I respect most in the media here are the ones who do fact-based reporting. They're willing to take a story where it goes, no matter if that's something that will reflect badly on some people, may reflect well on some people, but take it where the evidence leads us. And that's a very hard job because sometimes it's hard to uncover that evidence. There's a lot of good journalists in town that are trying to give you the truth.
And there's a lot of other information coming your way. Perhaps a non-journalist could give an opinion. Yes.
I think you said something really interesting right a second ago when you said, are you getting the truth you need? I think a lot of us sometimes are looking for certain truths. And I think we live in a world where there's so much access to data and to different facts and alternative facts. And I think we forget that data can be spun and data can be read in different ways. And the kind of data that you get can shape your perspective. So I think what's hard is I think we're living in a world where we're searching for the truth that we need because it can make us feel good or it can validate the things that we already think instead of trying to look at a wide swath of facts or data to get a more holistic perspective.
You raise a good point. Sometimes we don't even agree on the facts, different sets of facts underlying the truth. Hina?
As a native Hawaiian living here in my own homeland, I find that the truths are consistently and constantly truths applicable to everyone else except perhaps our people, our native people here. And it's often frustrating and often a depressing thing when we think about whose truths and what are those truths and how are they being applied to us? How are they guiding and impacting the lives of not only all of Hawaii, but very specifically for our Kanaka Maoli of the islands?
Many of us surround ourselves with truths that we believe in. We subscribe to information feeds, and we make sure that negativity doesn't enter in if we don't agree with what somebody's saying. Do you do that? Do you have an impenetrable media silo that keeps you from listening to what you don't want to hear? Or do you know people who do? Yes, microphone, please. This is Natalie from Chiefus Kamakahele School on Kauai.
Hi. I think a lot of times people won't watch all the news because they want to hear what they want to hear, and they'll just reinforce their own side, and they don't like fact check exactly. Whatever supports their side, they'll just go with it. They don't fact check it. And a lot of times people will be watching it, and if they find something they don't like, they'll just turn it off.
Denby, microphone this way, please. Thank you.
Well, you have truth based on fact, which journalists seek, and then you have truth based on belief. And I think we see more today mixed in with truth based on fact, truth based on belief, which would be evidenced even in our own president, who's appealed to his constituency on their beliefs, i.e., Muslims are bad people, they shouldn't be allowed in this country, or immigrants are taking all your jobs, or the elite are running the country and leaving you out. But I think the benefit that we have today is that we can search original records very easily. Before, when I first started reporting, you'd have to go to the library or look up things in magazines or go down to the law library and look in big books. Now with just a touch of our finger, we can get at fact easier, I think.
You know, people have been debating what truth is for thousands of years, and we'll get more into this as we go along. But first, we want to tap into social media tonight to hear from those watching. Liberty Peralta and her team are upstairs in the social media hub, hearing from those of you who are viewing on TV or online. Hi, Liberty.
Hi, Leslie. Hi, everyone.
How's it going? Have you heard anything yet?
We have. We have some comments in the queue.
Please share.
Okay, sure. We have a couple here. We have one from Calvin on Facebook, and he says that sometimes you need to fact check the fact checkers. We also have a comment from TC in Honolulu via Facebook. He says puppet media is part of the problem. And one more from Giselle, also from Facebook. She says, you can fact check on fake fact check sites all over the internet. Try saying that 10 times fast. If you're watching at home and you'd like to participate in this discussion, you can email us at Kākou@pbshawaii.org. Or if you're joining us via our Facebook live stream, you can leave a comment under our Facebook live video. If you're on Twitter or Instagram, you can also use the hashtag PBSKākou hashtag. So back to you, Leslie.
All right, thank you, Liberty. We'll be checking back with you a little bit later. We all know Andy Bumatai. He's a favorite comedian and shrewd social observer. Let's hear what he has to say about fact-checking your truth.
Hi, Andy Bumatai here, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of Have You Fact-Checked Your Truth? And I thought I'd start by reading a list of news outlets that have been shown to be 100% factual. Okay, I hope that was helpful. My point? Making sure it's true is up to you, and you're capable of it. Even though for a second you believed that email that a Nigerian prince was trying to leave you money in his will. And that's the danger, wanting something to be true so badly that you ignore the fact that an attorney trying to give you $10 million would probably address you by name. And yes, it takes a little work and time not to be a victim, because these fake news sites target gullible people with the attention span of a gnat. You know what I'm talking about. Those people who write posts and use the @ sign because writing the word out would be too much trouble. Or how about people who resend articles that start with, "This is not fake," or "This was on the evening news," or my favorite, "This is going viral. Send to everyone in your contact list." Huh? That's like, they don't need the money. Donate now. These are difficult times, and the truth is elusive, especially when many people consider credibility in direct proportion with how many social media followers someone has. That's like, the Pope? Give me a break. He's not even on Facebook. There's an old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, especially when it's about a politician you hate. So, before you repost that article about your least favorite senator on the Conservation Committee driving a styrofoam Hummer that runs on monk seal oil, you might want to make sure it's true, even though you really want it to be.
Gotta love Andy Bumatai. Thank you, Andy. Have you ever liked a post on social media that you knew was not true? It's a question we're going to ask in-house here. Have you ever liked a post on social media that you knew was not true? Come on. Come on. Yes.
Hi. I think I've done that several times, but it's weird to like. It's weird when you like a celebrity passing away. I don't know if there was like a rumor going around that Jackie Chan had passed away, and I just I don't know why, but immediately I liked it and I reposted it, and I was just like, wait a minute. I actually Googled it and asked people around because I just grew up with him, and then I just realized I didn't even check. I just oh my gosh, this happened, and I just wanted to share it with everybody. So, and it turns out he was okay.
Does that sound familiar? I mean, maybe you like how fresh it was, even if you think it was, maybe it's absurd and you thought that was funny. Comment?
Yes, I have. One of my biggest peeves with social media, with Facebook especially, is someone will say, "Well, I don't know if this is true or not," and then they post it, and I'm like, "Well, if you don't know if it's true or not, why are you spreading it?" And I used to send people individual private messages when they did that, and then I just got kind of frustrated, and I said, "Okay, I started putting more public messages under it, and that turned out to be not the right thing to do because they want it so bad to be true that they're not going to." And then I would post like Snopes links this isn't true. And then I said, I can't fix the internet, so I'm quitting.
Other comments? The idea of liking a post that you don't know is true. Bert?
Well, I have to admit that this is not exactly what you are describing. But I do want to share this because I think it's kind of cute. I do like a lot of puppy pictures on Instagram. Okay, now I'll admit this on TV that I do. And what has happened as a result of that is every time I go to Instagram now, my search feed is full of retriever puppies. And there's just puppies after puppies after puppies. And so what happens, obviously, in the algorithm is that if you like something and they seem to indicate a consistent interest in puppies and even the occasional kitten, I will get nothing but puppy and kitten videos.
Be careful what you like. Real quick, would you mind passing the microphone right behind you to Shane from Kauai?
So this is a comment kind of to her statement. So when somebody posts a lie on social media, it's basically a rumor, and rumors spread like wildfire because people choose not to check their facts because they want it so much to be true, or they just don't think, and they repost it. And it's kind of like if somebody lit a fire, you may blame it on them for starting that fire, but the reason why that fire is still alive is because you are feeding it, and then it'll eventually grow into something big like a forest fire or something like that. So,
but people tend to feel a little anonymous on the web, right?
People will post stuff that may not be true. They have more confidence because they feel that they're safe because they can use an account that doesn't use their actual name or anything, so they think it'll never be traced back to them, but it definitely can be.
Shane is watching you. Thank you, Shane. You know, we have some more social media comments coming in. We want to go upstairs and check with Liberty at our social media hub. Liberty, what are you hearing?
Well, we have a few comments from Facebook. This one's from Steven in Kaneohe, and he says, I actually mute hyper-political relatives periodically. I can't handle 5 posts a day like that. We also got a comment from Wendell in San Francisco, and he says, I guess the problem is many people are unable to discern a credible source from a non-credible source. What makes it even harder is that non-credible sources are often much more alluring than fact-based reporting. Conspiracies are exciting. And if you'd like to chime in to this discussion, you can join us on social media or email us at Kākou@pbshawaii.org.
All right, thank you very much, Liberty. Now, if many of us enjoy and like fictional or absurd or dubious posts, does that mean the truth is overrated? We went out and sampled opinions on this.
Growing up, I've always had like a definitive truth, and I've always wanted to find out why. But recently, I've taken a lot of classes here that brought in my outlook on life and kind of just to ask questions around from every angle you can think of, instead of just seeing it as black and white, right or wrong, truth or false.
I think in today's world, it's hard to define which is fake news and which is, coming from the proper authorities. But I think it's personal. You can decide for yourself if you believe it's truth or not.
And I read several sources. I'll read Yahoo News, Huffington Post, AOL, Google. I'll read the newspaper, and watch the news. So a lot of times they contradict each other. So I just take it with a grain of salt. I mean, I do want to keep informed, but like I said, I take it with a grain of salt only because I don't know what's true.
In a sense, it is overrated, but it depends what type of truth that we're talking about. Yeah.
Do you think that it's possible to have more than one truth?
Of course. I think people in general are very subjective. Everyone has different experiences with whatever they're trying to go through in life. So, yeah, there's absolutely different types of truths.
To me, the truth is the truth. Like going back to the Bible, for instance, like you have this truth, and that is the truth. So you can go off of like people kind of like start to twist it and make something else out of it. But the truth is always the truth.
Everybody has, I think, a bias. I think everybody is just, we're human beings, we have opinions. I think everyone has a little bit of bias, no matter how unbiased you try to be. So I think we should be teaching people how to discern what is biased and what is not. It's not about censorship, it's more about teaching people how to determine if something is, the term fake news going around a lot. I think we should be teaching people information literacy.
I love that. Information literacy, that's what we need. So the question is the truth overrated? Let's sample more opinions right here, and we have Donnie.
I don't think the truth is overrated. I think that our quest to find the truth is becoming more and more difficult. And, we're talking a lot about social media, and I find that it is a blessing and a curse. And it is denying us the opportunity, in my opinion, to get at the truth. I just lost, it's denying our opportunity to get at the truth because we are so inundated. It is clearly been demonstrated to us that we are, that the truth as we see it and read it on Facebook and other social media is being manipulated. And so how are we supposed to find that truth? And so I think that, in the words of my cousin Miley Meyer, we need to dig deep. We need to dig very deep in terms of what it is that we are seeking in order to find that truth, because we're not going to find it on, in my opinion, we're not going to find it on social media.
When you say we, are you talking about individuals or all of us?
All of us.
Same truth?
Yeah. I mean, well, no, we don't all have the same truth, obviously, but I think that we are, we're all searching for our own truth, and we want to know that the news, especially that we are reading, especially during these perilous times, is accurate. And so I think our responsibility, our kuleana for that, is to dig deep and try to go to reliable sources and not share things that we know are marginal or simply untrue.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, I want to that social media post, social media comment. You know, our attention spans nowadays, it's like this quick, you know, and just one swipe, that's how fast our attention span is. And so who has the time to go like that, look at the article, dig for that truth? Like, really, who has that time? Because and it's easier to just like something, or, you know, pops up, love, emoji, whatever it is, and then click share. You know, if you just saw the headline, like, it's super easy. And so the challenge is if you really wanted to know or not. And so, you know, we're human beings, and we can choose to do that or not. And so for me, like, I like stuff because it'll interest me, and then if someone is willing to either discuss or challenge, then I'm open for that. And that's why, you know, you like stuff, and then you tend to fall into the algorithm and get into this load of people that is in that your liking of posts, and you start engaging with that type of people. So that has that same mindset as well. So
it's interesting. You said when you engage, do you find engagement online on social media to be fulfilling? Brian, microphone, please. Thank you.
I like that we're using social media as a broad term, but I think 98% of the time we're talking about Facebook. And one of the challenges that we're facing is that the platform is so powerful, and we don't fully understand the extent of that power. And I like what Denby said. We're now seeking more of our belief, an affirmation of our belief, than we are of information. And I think it's because we all feel inundated with information, and we are looking for someone to tell us what is correct. The problem is, I think, is we've all seen people give ultimatums, probably in the last 6 months, that if you don't agree with this policy, unfriend me now. I do not want to see anything contrary to my view. And it's understandable. But, you know, Sam mentioned an algorithm. Bert talks about being inundated with puppies. You can imagine that as you start to craft this universe where everything affirms your belief, there's no need or even interest to have that challenged. You're very comfortable with everything you see, but it's not all true. And bad ideas, conspiracies, falsehoods have never been rare, but now you can make a world where you subsist entirely on that false information.
You're depressing me, but that's what we're here for, to really search it. Okay, oh, yes, Solomon.
Well, going off of what they were saying, yeah, social media is really powerful. I mean, it can mobilize people, but it can also put people in bubbles based on your belief and stuff like that. But what I try to do is try to engage people. So I ask my friends on Facebook, you know, what is your feeling on this? I just asked last week, what are their feelings on NFL players kneeling during the national anthem? And I would get people that has both sides of the spectrum, but I want to see that, you know, because if we lock ourselves in our own bubble, we're not going to be able to communicate with each other. And it's okay to disagree with people, but you know, the way we move forward is to have that, you know, communication with each other.
And the only way you can really understand anyone is to hear them out, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people that I tried to communicate with, you know, blocked me on Twitter or on Facebook or started insult and messaging me and stuff like that. But I try to stay away from being a mean person, but I try to, you know, inform people, you know, you can look at it this way or you can look at it that way, but your emotions sometimes will get the best of you on social media.
I see. I think there's a woman with a microphone here. Okay.
I guess that's me now.
That's Powell.
You know, I agree with all of the comments about social media, but I'm reminded of a time I was traveling and had rented a car, and I was going from point A to point B in this very small little town, and I relied exclusively on the GPS, and I realized that I had 3 turns to make between the home I was staying in and the supermarket, and I couldn't do it without the GPS because I had relied on it every single time. I think we do the same thing with social media. And I think we turn on social media and we turn off our brains. And I believe in times like this, it's really important, to have those conversations, to have them online, but also have them with real live human beings in real rooms with real people having real conversations and being open to that conversation.
Thank you. Neens, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you. You know, when Facebook hit 1 billion users, I wondered why. Why are there 1 billion people on that social network? And what I've learned is that people want a place to belong. Too many times I can only speak for myself, but in my personal life, I'm excluded in certain things. Maybe I don't have enough money, I don't work someplace, I just don't have access. When I join something like Facebook, I'm included. I belong to the most popular social network on the internet. And then I can connect with people who have similar values, who have similar beliefs, you know, as me, or come from the same neighborhood that I do. And so a study that I found in 1995, 2 professors proved that we all are born with this need to belong. And in their study, they showed that we will stay where we belong even when we know it's not good for us, right? Because we don't know where else we can go, you know, to belong. And so when you talk about not so credible sources of news or information, they've created content that speak to either the person's values or their fears or whatever it is, just to make them feel like you belong right here. And it makes people feel safe, you know, comfortable, as Ryan said, and it's very difficult to get out of the relationship.
That's a great point. And I think, Lei, you had your hand up?
Yes. I'm enlightened by the young people in the audience, especially that young lady with the blonde hair there. Because I think we're talking about media literacy, and media literacy can begin at a very young age, where young people could understand, even at elementary, 1st grade, 2nd grade, like, hey, who said it? Are they paying the person, and what are they getting paid? When was the information gotten? Why do we get it, and how do we get it? So if you go through a checklist and you teach this at a very young age, that's why I'm enlightened to see the young people here. I'm really pleased that you're here, because you're learning things that I didn't learn. Hina brought up a very good point, because when we were growing up as Native Hawaiians, we didn't know we had all these issues that were happening that, you know, politically. I won't go into that, but it's important for our young people to learn at a very young age, because it's all about media literacy.
And they've got a fire hose of it coming at them, of media. Neens, you mentioned Facebook as a place people belong, and it's big. We want to share some data truth with you. Local research, just to get an idea of the number of people who are engaging in social media with devices they can take anywhere. In Hawaii, 80% of all adults have a smartphone. 63% own a web-enabled tablet. 56% of all adults in Hawaii have been active on Facebook in the past 30 days. That's more than 630,000 adults. So just Facebook alone has an enormous impact on how we communicate. If many of us are living in our own social media or other communication bubbles, exposed only to our own version of the truth, is that why we can't seem to come together as a community and as a country? Are we stuck? And if so, how do we get unstuck?
I think it actually leads to kind of what we're seeing now, this big divide, where people only see their point of view and their side, and they're not willing to look at the other side, and they're not willing to compromise on certain things and certain ideals. If that's what makes things work, it's compromise and, you know, basically working together and maybe not always agreeing with the other side, but at least seeing the other side's point of view.
No, I don't think we're stuck per se. I just think most people are just misled, especially with like how media and like social media specifically, like we see things that might not be true, but we easily believe it.
We definitely have to limit our time with social media because it's like it connects us, but at the same time it's putting up a barrier between people. It's seen as like it's a way to like push people out of the way per se. And just if you want to get something done, just do it face to face instead of doing everything on social media.
We have created this platform where we're just buying into everything that we believe. So yeah, I think it takes a conscious effort to go outside of that and really do some research or try to put yourself in a position of somebody that would see it differently than you or that it might affect differently.
And it seems the political climate is about who's right and who's wrong. And both are wrong and both are right. So it's kind of hard, and they're very adamant they're at each other's throats pretty much regarding what should be done. And I think they're biased to the fact that they don't want one party's view to win than the other. So that's kind of frustrating when you're looking at that on the news. It gets really sad.
To some extent, you know, things go in cycles, and life goes in cycles, and I'm hoping it'll kind of burn itself out, but I worry that it won't. But other than taking personal responsibility and trying to maintain rational civil discourse individually, I don't know. If there were a simple answer, we would have fixed it by now.
Let's hear from our guests in studio now. Are we stuck? And if so, how do we get unstuck? Ilihia?
You know, with all the challenges that social media could present, you know, having immediate access to the opinions of a billion people, there's also the opportunity to access much more facts than ever before. You know, that Denby mentioned, you know, we can get source information. We can watch county council hearings. We can, you know, see documents. And there are lots of great journalists doing lots of hard work. And we as consumers just need to understand that we need to look for that. And we need to look for credible information from credible sources and figure out what that means.
Well, how do you do it? Because it's coming at you and you're looking at all kinds of things that interest you. Do you stop and fact check stories?
I do, actually. I tend toward the skeptical, just naturally. Like, I don't know about that. You know, I'll go check 2-3 other places, and, you know, I don't feel the need to believe something. I don't feel obligated to believe something just because I see it. And yeah.
Thank you. Stephanie, you had a point?
I believe that truth is the truth. And in business, if you lie, you're dead. And so you have to be objective. You have to do your fact checking. You have to be on top of it. Social media is a different thing. It's kind of like porn. It's like social porn. You know, you're all in there and you're just enjoying it because it's what's going on. Oh, that celebrity did that. Oh my God. But really, social media is to help you go forward. In business, if you don't do the truth, I'm a consultant. If I don't tell the truth, I will be dead. my business will be dead.
And
I
you
will
think-
be
you think
without
there
a
is
job.
one truth.
There, you have to check the facts. There is a lot. Everybody has his story, her story, and the story. But if you're discerning, you will know. And you have to do that. You can't just say, well, I only have this much time. I have a gnat for a brain. My brain is about this short. But I still spend hours and hours checking because I sell my opinion. If I am not correct, I could die in my business. And I still have a big mortgage. So I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to pay attention. And so we all have to be, you have to pay attention. You cannot sit here and say, well, you know, I'm okay with this and it's media and blah, blah, blah. You have to take responsibility for yourself. And you have to know and teach yourself and learn. We're human beings. We're not little amoebas just absorbing everything and taking it. We have to be discerning.
Stephanie, there's a businessman right in front of you who'd like to have the say.
Well, I couldn't agree more with what Stephanie was saying, that we need to find the process that allows us to get to the truth. And if we don't have time to do it ourselves, find groups or other people who you trust who are doing that, like journalists or others that you believe are actually pursuing the truth. Because I'm in the science business. If we're wrong about that. I mean, you know, there's consequences to that. And so it's not just about what you believe. There are basic truths that we're trying to get to. Now, they don't apply necessarily to all the subjective things that celebrities, et cetera. But when it comes down to it, you need to find the process either through yourself or through others to get to the real truth.
Thank you. Nick. Hi.
What is it that we're talking about here, right? Sorry, I've been like, you know. I think, somebody earlier brought up, you know, that we're kind of in our own little enclaves. We're stuck in the algorithm nowadays. And the power of that is, if I were to give a real world example, I'm from Waianae, and a lot of people have, you know, a legitimate view of the Waianae Coast before ever having approached it. But, you know, for the people who do, and so to bring it back to social media, for the people who are able to, you know, maybe look into something else that is contrary to their popular thought process, you know, I think that's where we get unstuck. To be stuck, it's not having the willingness to see from some other perspective, to learn something that you otherwise wouldn't learn. And that's hard. Last thought, I think for human beings, you know, we tend toward the simple explanation, the labels. That's why stereotypes are so powerful. And so, yeah, if something is thrown at you all the time and it sounds good, we might tend to just let it stick, you know, oh, that must be true. And the one thing I think I heard it in film school is visibility equals credibility. So if that's what you see all the time, you're going to start to believe it, whether you like it or not. It's going to start to become more true.
I see. Several of you have had your hands up. Colin, I saw yours first.
Over the past 5 years or so, this question really occupied a lot of social scientists, and people were curious about what it would take if someone has a demonstrably false belief to push them a little bit. And initially the hope was that if you presented them with some facts that everyone could agree on, that they might change their mind. And this was the hope behind sites like factcheck.org and Snopes. The sad thing is it doesn't work. In fact, it's depressing but true that most of the research suggests that when someone really believes something and they're confronted with what you say is the truth, they cling to that previous belief even harder. And this was a very depressing conclusion, but there is some hope. And what seems to work is that people trust other people they see as, you know, their ideological peers, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. And so if Republicans start correcting other Republicans and Democrats start correcting other Democrats, that works. That makes people reevaluate their views. And so that is one way we can get unstuck, which is that we all need to correct people in our own ideological communities when they're espousing things that are just simply false.
And I think that's very respectful. It's not patronizing. You just expect everybody to have a high level. Thank you. Kākou, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Leslie. The thing I think a lot about in recent times, there's this surge of people distrusting the truth. And I think that's more of a symptom of a greater issue. I think people who distrust truth feel threatened in their lives. And I think the bigger things we should be looking at is creating living wage jobs for folks and teaching people really young to be critical thinkers. And I think when we have school systems that treat children as cogs, we have businesses that demean you as a person, the first place you go to, you attract predatory forces. And they know what they're doing, and they know what you want to hear. So I really believe that this is a conversation around understanding that social media is a poor surrogate for truth. I think truth is community, and really embracing the technologies of community, like working with people on land or on something you love and having a conversation there, and then looking at how that applies to how are you bettering your school system, how are you creating meaningful living wages for someone who may, in our communities, that people feel like the bottom part of their Maslow pyramid is cared for, then they'll be less inclined to want to feed into people that are telling them this isn't your fault, it's their fault.
Very thoughtful comments. They're also coming in on social media. We want to check with Liberty Peralta in our social media hub. What are you hearing, Liberty?
Well, we have a couple comments here that are related to our question right now. Are we stuck? Here's one from Emily from Kākou who says, getting offended is the fastest way to shut down a conversation. It's evasive behavior and is not constructive. Criticism, especially of those in power, is not inherently rude. We also have a comment from Tony from Maui who says, social media makes everyone think their opinion matters or has inherent value. Everyone wants the power of likes. And if you have a comment of your own that you'd like to share with us, feel free to email us at kākou@pbshawaii.org or use the hashtag PBSKākou on social media. Back to you, Leslie.
Will do, Liberty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone you may follow, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, thinks we are stuck as a nation. He's a respected scientist, author, and director of the Hayden Planetarium at the American Museum of Natural History. He hosts the PBS program NOVA, shown here on PBS Hawaiʻi. Dr. Tyson makes a case for science as an arbiter of certain truths. See if you agree.
How did America rise up from a backwoods country to be one of the greatest nations the world has ever known? We pioneered industries. And all of this required the greatest innovations in science and technology in the world. And so science is a fundamental part of the country that we are. But in this, the 21st century, when it comes time to make decisions about science, it seems to me people have lost the ability to judge what is true and what is not, what is reliable, what is not reliable, what should you believe, what should you not believe. And when you have people who don't know much about science, standing in denial of it and rising to power, that is a recipe for the complete dismantling of our informed democracy.
Let us demand that educators around America teach evolution not as fact, but as theory.
An increasing number of parents showing skepticism about vaccinations.
Voters have approved a ban on GMOs.
Critics call climate change unproven science.
That's not the country I remember growing up in. Not that we didn't have challenges. I'm old enough to remember the 60s and the 70s. We've got a hot war and a cold war, civil rights movement, and all of this was going on. But I don't remember any time where people were standing in denial of what science was. One of of the great things about science is that it is an entire exercise in finding what is true. You have a hypothesis, you test it, I get a result. A rival of mine double checks it because they think I might be wrong. They perform an even better experiment than I did and they find out, hey, this experiment matches. Oh my gosh, we're onto something here. And out of this rises a new emergent truth. It does it better than anything else we have ever come up with as human beings. This is science. It's not something to toy with. It's not something to say, I choose not to believe equals MC squared. You don't have that option. When you have an established scientific emergent truth, it is true whether or not you believe in it. And the sooner you understand that, the faster we can get on with the political conversations about how to solve the problems that face us. So once you understand that humans are warming the planet, you can then have a political conversation about that. You can say, well, are there carbon credits? Do we do this? Do we put a tariff on it? Do we fund? Do we subsidize? Those have political answers. And every minute one is in denial, you are delaying the political solution that should have been established years ago. As a voter, as a citizen, scientific issues will come before you. And isn't it worth it to say, all right, let me at least become scientifically literate so that I can think about these issues and act intelligently upon them. Recognize what science is and allow it to be what it can and should be in the service of civilization. It's in our hands.
That was astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. My question to you is, can we rely on science? Is science always right? And I believe Z has an answer.
Yeah, hi. For me, I work in public health, so science is very important. We are fact-based in what we do. And one of our challenges is, how do we take these complex scientific, medical concepts and make them understandable for your general public? How do we take something that is complex and easy to understand for somebody who's not scientifically literate? And as hard as we try, you'll always have people who don't believe science. No matter who's giving the information. It could be a medical doctor, an astrophysicist. They just don't believe it, and it's a challenge.
And is science always right?
I think so. I mean, we have a scientific process to validate the data, as Dr. Tyson just talked about.
Kākou, we'll get to you right after Ulalia.
I think the question, is science always right? It is what is science? It's not a belief, it's not faith, and it's not truth. It's a process, it's a system of thinking and knowing. It's something we've all done for generations and generations and generations, and it's served us well. At times it's been off. People have thought the earth was flat. There's all sorts of places where it's been off, but we've checked it, we've asked the question, we've gone out. But it's our way of observing our world. It's our way of asking questions, and we need to keep doing that. I agree that maybe we're not critical thinkers. As Kākou said, we're not raising critical thinkers to be able to ask those questions and want to seek out for ourselves answers, and then to further ask and delve into it. But I think we're asking the wrong question if it's truth or right or believe in it. But it's a process we need and have had.
And
we need
asking
to rely
questions
on
is
it.
good, right? That's how you at least start turning over things. Thank you. Ikaika?
I just want to build on what Z and Ulalia were just saying, which is that at the heart of it, science is a method, right? And part of that method is the ability to vet other people's findings, for there to be a system of publishing results, and then for other people completely who may not know you to go and then respond to and do their own independent research. And I think we should think about, what would a social network that is built around the scientific method look like? And it really would look like the internet, would look like the original architecture of the internet. What Facebook and what the modern social networks are built around is entertainment. They're not designed to be machines that produce truth. The internet, the original idea of the internet, is a machine that's designed to support truth because it was designed to, it was the architecture for scientific inquiry internationally.
Interesting. I'm going to put Ian on the spot because I know you're a social media maven, so to speak, and you work very closely with scientists.
Well, I learned everything from Neen's, Bert and Ryan on social media. Yeah, if you don't know Oceanit, we're kind of like Big Bang Theory on steroids. A lot of really, really smart people, but it is people. I mean, I agree with Ikaika. It's the internet I saw when it was just in the 90s when there was no web browsers and things, and it's a tool. I mean, it actually evolved from something that DARPA started, or ARPA at the time was called, and it really was to connect universities to do research. And that eventually became another kind of tool that we use today. So I think if there's a challenge, it's now it's driven by these great tools. And in a way, I see Facebook as this actually great tool. But again, it depends on the person who's using it and what they're putting out there. And for me, it's always been a great way to share my life and what's going on, because some friends would say, hey, I've known you for 10 years or 20 years, but I don't really know you. And I was like, wow, you don't really know me. So I felt like, oh, Facebook is great because I can just share all the things that are going on in my life. And so when I do see you, Leslie, 6 months later, it's like we can just speak about today and not try and have to catch up for 6 months. So I think at one level, social media is this incredibly powerful tool. But again, it's a tool, but we're human, and part of it is, humans do different things and want different things. And I agree. I feel very much, as we were thinking about tonight and I was coming here, I was thinking about, man, I'm in a real big bubble. And it's a self-selecting bubble. I've filtered out the things I don't want to hear by not befriending or certain people. So what I've been trying to do over the years is just, like somebody befriends me, I friend them. Because they're going to give me a different opinion than my own. And that's really important for me to have, is to not just be in this bubble. And I think that's kind of what happened during this presidential election. Is I think a lot of us realized, man, we were so disconnected from the realities of what's going on in other parts of the country, and that people are very, very unhappy.
Thank you. Paul first, and then Hina.
I want to build off of your comment about it being a tool. I agree with that. And like any tool, I think we can use it for better, or we can use it to sort of dull down and dumb down and just stare at it and glean from it what we want. I know from my own personal experiences, I've found through Facebook groups of people that have broadened my horizons dramatically. As a writer, I have become part of Facebook groups that have really taught me about different cultures and the term white privilege, which was something that I had read and heard but didn't really understand until I heard the opinions of women of color and women from other parts of the world. And I started to see my own white privilege in a way I don't think I would have seen in my own, in real life bubbles of human beings. So to that point, I know we love to dump on social media as being the dumbing down of America, but I don't think it has to be. I think it can be a very positive tool. And to that same point, I think the fact that we perhaps are in such perilous times speaks to the engagement of the young people, like you were talking about earlier. If any of you were here for Trevor Noah when he performed in Honolulu, he said, we're all political geniuses now. We know what the emoluments clause is. We know how to spell it and what it means. I think we are far more informed right now because we have to be. And I think social media has been part of that. So while I view it with a wary eye, I also don't want to see us dump on it as the dumbing down of America.
Hina?
To build off of what you had said about being informed, I believe that those of us who do access and utilize social media, being informed often becomes selective. And therefore, I will remain true to this in my own social media engage, and that is that it is incumbent upon each and every one of us to be highly critical in our analysis and seek at least some sort of logic, some kind of logic that can make sense out of what we consume and what we subsequently put out. And again, back to the truth that we were speaking about. Whose truth? Speaking about science, whose science? As a Native Hawaiian, there's native science and there's other forms of science. So again, our truths, we have to be critically analytical in terms of what lens are we looking at all of these things through.
Faye.
I'm sitting here feeling like an 86-year-old dinosaur. I always think that I know everything. I read the New York Times on Sundays. I read the Star Advertiser every day. I read everything, and anything I don't feel like reading all of, I tear it up and put it aside and read it later. But my feeling is that when people invite me to join LinkedIn, I think, oh my God, what is LinkedIn and why would I want to be bothered? Facebook, I know what it is, but I don't know how to access it. If I want to access something, I have to go to my Hanai son and ask him to do it for me. But yet I think I'm very well informed. I feel that I communicate well. I talk on the phone a lot. I call my friends on the mainland. And I think I know more than most everybody. On my tombstone, I wanted to say judgmental and opinionated. But when I'm in a situation like this, I'm feeling like a retarded person. And my wonder is, people, I'm retired. I haven't worked for, thousands of years because I'm an old person. But I just wonder if anybody else who's not speaking feels like I do, that they're not really equipped to participate because they're not big fans of Facebook, Twitter. And when people say hashtag, I don't know what hashtag is. and yeah, I really don't. And the thing is, I wouldn't mind if I thought I was dumb, but as I said, I'm judgmental, opinionated. I think I know more than almost everybody in the world, but at the same time, it's a whole new world. And when you're in my world from the past, you just don't really relate to this, but I think it's wonderful for people who want to do it. And also, I'm resting on my laurels. I'm not trying to reach out anybody. I'm not trying to make money, not trying to do anything, don't need anything that I don't have. And so I just feel a little bit lost, but I commend you on the show.
And you probably have a lot more free time than those of us on social media. Nicole, did I see you raise your hand?
I just want to say that you're using the original social media, and that's human beings. And not to turn the conversation a little too much, but I've been hearing it and kind of bits and pieces of it. But I think that we're also talking about the challenges that we have of finding truth within. We're talking about what we do to find truth outside of ourselves. Sure, we have the right sources. But the other challenge that we're having is the challenge in our community, and it comes from the people that we surround. You're doing the right thing, talking to people, engaging with people, and it's really in that interaction, and it can be online as well. Are we questioning if we know who we really are? Am I really an open person? Am I really, willing to have conversations with people not from my background? If you're not doing that online and social media, are you actually doing that in your real life? And how is that informing the rest of the information that you're allowing into, your media diet, which, some days we got to trim the diet a touch. So just wanted to throw that in there. But, much respect to you. I think that's why we're all here tonight, is because
And you've cleverly changed the subject from science, and I like it very much. One last comment before we move on, Christina?
Actually, yeah, I'm kind of coming back to that idea of science, and is science always right? And I really struggled because I desperately want to say yes, and it's not that I don't disagree, but I'm a middle school teacher, so I'm currently teaching To Kill a Mockingbird, and I had a talk with my students about the fact that eugenics was a science, that was taught in textbooks and taught at universities throughout the nation, that greatly misled a country that we still feel the ramifications of today. So it's not so much that I don't think science is the process is truth. I agree it's that process, but I think where we are getting our science from, and for example, like social media, why am I getting news from like my ex-boyfriend's mom? Like why am I trusting her for sources instead of using a scientific process, right? So I think that critical thinking piece of who did this process, are they unbiased? Are they actually after facts? Because nowadays, a lot of people can claim science, and I think that's where we start getting into kind of a sticky wicket.
Thank you. It's likely that passion propels many folks to like online comments of dubious truth. Are you influenced more by passion than by reason or fact? Let's head outside again and sample opinions.
I don't engage in their passions because we're all allowed to have that kind of passion or opinion about things, but the more you know about a certain subject, you're less likely to bash against it.
I normally just skip all that like politics and all that. I skip those. I don't really get into it because I've seen so many, like, when I do read the comments sometimes, like they get all like angry at each other. There's a lot of debate on it, and I don't want to ruin my day, so I just skip all that stuff.
Sometimes, like, if they're my closest friends and I feel bad for them, I'm gonna like it, And sometimes I even like my own posts. Not gonna just to make me feel good about myself. Shh, don't tell anybody, okay?
I think as human beings, there's some capacity we have to take in information in particular periods of time. And so if if the information we're pulling in is garbage, I don't know if it dumbs us down, but it's got to affect the way we think critically about things.
Because I work with kids, if it's something to do with kids, I'm more emotional. So I am more likely to like it or share it versus if it's older or it's something different, I'll use more of my reasonable thinking side.
Passion. Because my whole life I've followed my gut and it's led me to where I am, and I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm young, alive.
Would you say you are influenced more by passion or by reason? Kuipo.
I think before I even get to that answer, from what I've heard earlier, all the time I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, nana ike kumu. So we have a phrase that says, look to the source. And the source being ourselves first. So naturally, for me, when I'm looking at something at social media, and I've got sucked in many times, and now I look at it from the perspective that if people are doing well, to commend them on the positive, as opposed of jumping into the negative of matters, which could be easily driven by passion, really. And so I think if we strike a balance within ourselves and go back to the basics of just our values, who we are as our mothers and parents, daughters and grandchilds of our people, of our own people, and I think we will stop yearning to be needed in another space that is not our kuleana. And that's how I view this, because we do have the kuleana to look into every single bit and piece that we are going to believe in, start believing it, because the end result is when we start to do things that kind of takes us away from the greater good of our community, then I believe we get stuck. Nothing is about us. We have to think about our community first.
A lot of people
That's
nodding. Natalie, we'll get you in a moment, but first Hoku had his hand up. Hoku?
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. I think that, passion just leads to the reasoning, but this goes back to the previous conversation about where we were talking about social media bubbles. And to me, that seems like an emotional response. And where does that come from? That comes from, how people identify themselves. People tie their identity to facts, and they tie their identity to truths. And when their truth or when their fact or when anything like that is challenged, then that's, as an emotional response, as a passionate response, that's how they group themselves into this one little thing. And when multiple groups start to put themselves into these bubbles where, I believe this, but the other group doesn't believe this. So, it creates a little bit of conflict. And that's part of the reason why I think that passion-based observation is it's a little finicky, is because when you have these different bubbles that that are basing their identity on these different truths and facts, it leads to a divide, and those divides can be summarized in like just generalizations. Generalizations can sometimes hurt an entire community. So yeah, I think that's my answer.
Thank you. And Natalie, another digital native.
So I myself am influenced by passion, but I try not to let that get into my stories because I'm in media and we do stories for Hikino. And a lot of times we'll do a story on something good, and of course we're going to say good things about it and not trash it on our video. But like if there's something down the middle, then we need to stay reason and factual. And a lot of times with news and social media, people take a needle, stick their emotions in it, and with emotions, if somebody like responds the way they don't like, they'll get emotional or they'll like accuse them of stuff for some reason. But that's it.
We have a comment over here. Thank you. Lori?
Thank you. I think this question of emotion and truths come from, it's more of a competition of our values. So we hear a truth and it sparks an emotion from us because it is a value hold or it goes in conflict with a value that we hold. So I think is your truth more important than my truth? Is your experience more important than my experience? I don't think it is based on necessarily what that truth is. It's just what that truth speaks to you. And so this idea of emotions, I think it informs us what it is that we care about. And so I think a lot of times our leaders are trying to tell us what we should care about. And it's up to us whether or not we, based on our own values and our own experiences, whether we too will tend to care about that. So I think emotion is actually a very critical part of how we interpret information and different experiences out there. And I also think that question of like, how do we get unstuck? You know, again, like so many facts are always thrown at us, information is thrown at us. And I do think as humans, like emotion is what drives us. It drives us to either act or not act, to stay stuck, or to actually go and do something about that. So I don't think emotion is necessarily bad, but it's like how we tap into those emotions and not use them as a weapon. But knowing that about human beings and knowing like what emotions will actually get us to do something about what we hear out there.
Several of you are mentioning essentially managing ourselves, having a balance within ourselves. Shane, you had your hand up, and then Alfonso.
So I feel that people who are going off of passion are normally passion kind of normally like relates to belief and values and all of this other stuff. And when that comes into play, people can be hard-headed and like only go with what they believe. And in a lot of news stories, what they do a lot is if they want to support something, they know if they lie, then it'll ruin their career. But what they tend to do is they use the truth, but they cut parts out of it that go against their thing. And I feel that if you don't have the full truth, then are you really hearing the truth in terms that, is it biased or is it like any of this stuff? And then people who are reasonable, who go off of reason, I feel those are the people who listen to both sides of the story. They're the people who ask questions, who are into this, and then they're asking, okay, you're giving me this, but is there another part of this that you're not telling me? By looking at that, you can obviously see if a story is leaning to one side more than the other.
And sometimes it's deliberate, and sometimes it's an unintentional mistake. Alfonso.
I think our quest for truth makes us very vulnerable. And I believe that we see our best evidence of that in social media. And I think that's why so many people turn to social media, because they don't have to deal with the truth. They can hide behind the realities. And we spoke tonight often here about where we should get our truths. And unfortunately, because so many people are relying on social media for their truths, we forgot what really used to be our foundation, which was the home, our places of worship, and the places that we got our fundamental education, our schoolhouses. And because, for the most part, most of them have been replaced by some form of technology, which is greatly influencing what we now have moved the gauge of center either to the hard right or to the hard left. And because we are so vulnerable for something that affirms us as being truthful, as having purpose, we are apt to just go to social media, like, move on, and feel included in a group. What we are really setting ourselves up as a community is the demise, because we have people living next door to us, but they're not our neighbors because we don't have neighborhoods. And so that means that we really have not gotten to the truth of what we're supposed to be and our purpose as humankind. So I'm hopeful that this discussion will drive us back to what is our central need as humans, to seek for the real truth. And for those that have a passion for humanity, that we will take time to do, as Faya mentioned, and others. We'll start to talk to one another, because we can't have real conversations texting. And we cannot use Facebook to really affirm our like or dislike of something, because we don't invest the proper time that another human being warrants if we want to respect them.
Thank you. And you mentioned neighborhoods. We have a big neighborhood out there watching this, your neighbors or online. Liberty Peralta, who's in our social media hub, you're monitoring social media. What's happening?
Well, we have a couple of comments that came in during the science segment, the previous segment. We have one that came in through an Instagram message from Tasi Lealofa, who says, "Science is a way we as humans try to understand the world we live in. Therefore, it will always be ongoing and changing. Science is not always right, but it is a system that has helped us understand and learn our world." We also got a comment from Netta, who says, "It's sad that the truth of science has taken backseat to money and profitability." And again, if you'd like to join us, if you're watching from your couches at home and would like to join in the conversation, you can email us at Kākou@pbshawaii.org or use the hashtag PBSKākou on Twitter or Instagram.
Absolutely. Thank you, Liberty.
Thanks.
Does the media deserve all the criticism it's getting these days? National polls show that trust has fallen globally across all institutions: media, government, businesses, nonprofits. Robert Costa is a multimedia force working for news institutions that retain a measure of public trust and respect. He's the chief political reporter for The Washington Post, and he serves as moderator of Washington Week on PBS. I asked him how the label fake news has changed journalism.
Everything's changed because we in the media have to really evaluate ourselves on every story. Are we providing as much information as possible? Are we giving all the facts? Because we are under scrutiny. It's difficult at times because people are constantly questioning news reports. They read in a newspaper or online, and they're looking at different kinds of information, alternative news information that may not even be reporting. And so in the old days, you would have a newspaper or a television station. PBS would tell people what was going on, and that would be the main source. Now there are so many, thousands of outlets. You have to break through, and the breakthrough moments come with truth, and they come with real facts, not fake news, real facts. Put a mirror up to people in power. Let them see what's happening. Let them judge. It's not about us, it's about the story.
Well, how are people supposed to know who's credible?
It's sometimes tough for people to know who's credible. You have to discern that on your own. Try to digest information, and if you do read alternative sources that have a reputation for what I was talking about, for integrity. A news magazine or an editorial magazine like the New Republic on the left or the Wall Street Journal editorial page on the right. If you think about it, there are reputable organizations who are not just objective news sources, and if you just stay on that integrity point, you'll do okay.
Robert, even when people agree on the same facts, which seems to be getting less common, there are different conclusions all around. Is truth increasingly in the eye of the beholder rather than in a set of facts?
Tough question, and unfortunately I think the answer is the truth sometimes does seem to be in the eye of the beholder. I'll tell you, as a campaign reporter in 2016, whether I was covering Senator Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side or now President Trump on the Republican side, I would go to rallies and I would go up to a voter who was in the crowd and I would say, I'm Robert Costa with the Washington Post, writing a story about this event. And people on the left and the right would put their hands up and say, we don't want to talk. We don't trust the news. We don't trust the mainstream media. And they thought their truth was how they defined it. Social media is not enough. I love social media, but you have to look to the institutions, the organizations, and provide yourself with accurate information that you know has a reputation for being factual.
Well, it is a big subject, and I'm so glad we touched on a bit of it with you today. Thank you so much, Robert Costa of Washington Week, for joining us on PBS Hawaiʻi.
Thank you.
What media sources do you trust? That's our question. And first off the bat, Spencer Oshita, who's the former Kaleo editor at University of Hawaii. Spencer?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting and fascinating question because when you take a look at a lot of the sources, right, we tend to think of media, and when we say the media does this, the media thinks that, or the media has done this, sometimes I almost feel as if we're talking about the media as this like blob, as if they are just this one thing. And what's really interesting, I think Steve said it earlier, was that there are in fact committed journalists out there who are doing the work, they are researching, they're looking for the best way to share this fair sort of balanced reporting. And I work, as you said, in college media. I come across a lot of students who, as Ryan was talking about earlier, who are sort of crafting their universes around them. And so the challenge is confronting that very early. There's sort of a value to education and educating students. But more than that, and I think Hina said it earlier too, is looking at the lenses through which we look at the world. And if education can encourage people to start confronting the lenses through which they look at the world, and in many ways, I think the ethics codes in media sort of help to encourage journalists to do this. I think we're going to get a better sense of what journalism and what media sources can contribute in positive ways to society. But I think it does start with education. It starts with confronting those lenses, confronting those truths, and then asking ourselves too, how do we investigate, right? How do we continue looking at the truth? In sort of the first 24 hours of any tragic event, right? The news reporting or the news coverage is usually sort of off in some way. And that it's that sort of rush to judgment, that rush to get the news out that sometimes is very challenging for journalists as well. And so my philosophy is that a story is always evolving. You never know all the facts all the time. And so even if a story is 48 hours old, 72 hours old, the news cycle has passed, there's probably more information out there. So when we're looking at sources, don't trust just one source. Don't stop there, right? The story will continue evolving and you will get to know more of the facts, but you can't do that unless you sort of search for the truth and confront those lenses.
Thank you. I saw two hands up over here. Lloyd?
Just sitting in the back of the room and listening to a lot of great comments. The one that has been the big aha for me tonight is the comment that there is belief-based truth. And we all have a fundamental set of beliefs by which we interpret the data that comes at us and make that the truth. And I think that's the core problem, this great divide in our country. And as an example, I think about half our country believes that the role of government is to create an environment for me to go about my business and keep everyone else away from me. And the other half of the country believes the role of government is to help me do the best or live the best life I can. And they're very fundamental beliefs right down the middle of our country, and they've been there forever, and they will be there forever. And I put that in the context of just this week's tragedy in Las Vegas. the half that believes the government should stay out of our way think that that man should have all the guns he wants. And the other half that believes the government should be looking after me says, why didn't the government stop all those guns? And until we recognize that everyone has these core fundamental beliefs through which they measure and tweak every piece of information that comes to them, we're not going to get unstuck.
We're talking a lot about filters here. You have a comment? A microphone there, please. Thank you.
So I, for one, am not surprised by the amount of criticism the news receives or the media receives, because if you look at the news and the media these days, most of it is negative. Like, the amount of positive news you see is much lower than the amount of negative news you see. And with negative news, people tend to exaggerate, appeal to the emotions, so it gets distorted, and then it becomes not 100% true, and that's where all the criticism comes from. So, yeah.
All right. Another student journalist, and then an editor.
I think it's important to realize that media is a tool. So you can't just say this one sort of media is always right and this one sort of media is always wrong. It can at any time be used to bring about truth, or that same media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, can be used to not tell truth. And it's important to realize that, and also as the viewer, realize that it's your responsibility viewing that to know that it's not 100% right. We've seen even things like science aren't always right, and knowing that with those sources that, oh, this is right or this isn't always right, you have to be the one questioning, because like Socrates, like amazing people like that, they were like, all I know is that I don't know, or like they realized that the more they knew, the less they knew, and just you have to question everything, basically.
Thank you. Let me just pass the microphone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Steve.
I agree with everyone here who's talked about the huge problem that finding the truth in media, that's so important, separating truth from lies or distortions. But there's another problem, and Lei and Hina both touched on it earlier. When I was growing up, to be a well-informed person, you had to read the daily paper, you'd read maybe the New York Times, you'd watch TV occasionally. And the problem with that is Lei's story. Native Hawaiian stories weren't being told. Filipino stories weren't being told. The Waianae stories weren't being told. And as a result, we've evolved into a digital world in which those stories are now being told. And it's not just separating truth from fact, but it's collecting all the facts. I have a list of 100 bookmarks of articles I need to read to be well informed. And my list of books is probably as long too. And I can't keep up. I can't keep up with all the things I need to know. I need to know about your people. I need to know about your people. I need to know about my people. And Trump was elected because nobody in the nation was paying attention to Ohio and Wisconsin and all those places that had changed. And there was a reason. We didn't think high school educated people were worth listening to, and we were wrong. The problem is bandwidth. How do we cope with all the things we need to know? I don't have the answer to that.
Excellent, and that's probably always been true in this world. We're fortunate, Steve, to have some student journalists, PBS Hawaii's Hikino students in middle and high school here tonight. Waianae High School from Oahu, and from Kauai Chiefus Kamakahele Middle School and Kauai High School, and a Hikino graduate from South Kona. 2 years ago, Hoku Subiono was a student at a charter school at South Point on Hawaii Island, Kua'okala Miloli'i Hipu'u Virtual Academy. Hoku wanted to understand the controversy over whether a 30-meter telescope should be constructed atop Mauna Kea.
My name is Hoku Subiono, and I am a student at Kua'okala in Miloli'i. I love science and technology, and I'm actively involved in web design and computer technology. I'm also Hawaiian. I respect my culture and its values. In October, my classmates and I took these pictures at the groundbreaking ceremony of the 30-meter telescope. The 30-meter telescope at 34,000 square feet at 18 stories tall would be the largest telescope on Mauna Kea. Scientists say it will be 100 times better than any other telescope and will revolutionize astronomy.
If you took all the telescopes on Earth right now, it's going to be better than all of them combined. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe, but it's true.
I was surprised at the protest how passionate my people were in opposition to the telescope. Many Hawaiians see it as further desecration and destruction of their cultural heritage as well as their natural resources.
We have done many things together, but for this, I cannot stand and support you. You are about to try and make sacred the act that would desecrate our highest temple. We already know and we have seen how the UH maintains and takes care of this mountain. It does not.
I wanted to know more, so I reached out to several different people about their thoughts on TMT. I asked Mayor Billy Kanoy, a native Hawaiian, about why he supports the project.
I believe celestial navigation, astronomy, is a sacred science. I believe as Hawaiians, celestial navigation, we've, as part of our culture, it is how we got here, it is how we return, it is how we come home. Also, Mauna Kea, it's a sacred place, it's a vahipana. I think it's entirely appropriate that a sacred science should occur in a sacred place.
I asked Sandra Dawson, who works for the TMT, about the environmental impact studies concerning the project.
We went way beyond what most people do when they do one. We had 7 public meetings for our scoping. We went out into the community. We had 7 more meetings when we did our draft EIS. It's about 1,000 pages in 2 volumes. And at the end, in 2010, when it was completed, the governor, Lingle at the time, signed it, approved it, and no one challenged it in court.
I asked Kealoha Pascati, an environmental activist, about her position regarding the environmental impact of the TMT.
The TMT's environmental impact statement, which is only a state level, by the way, it should be federal, has adopted the same positions that the federal one already came up with, and that is that 30 years of astronomy development on Mauna Kea has resulted in adverse and significant impact to the natural and cultural resources of Mauna Kea. What our position is on the mountain is that we want no further development.
And those are just a few of the generous people who shared their opinions and arguments with me. Clearly this is a complicated issue, without a simple solution. I'm still torn. I want to preserve the places that mean so much to my cultural heritage, but I also see that the project will bring new understanding of our universe and provide educational opportunities to students in Hawaii. I hope to revisit this in 10 years' time and see for myself if TMT does in fact keep their commitments, both to help expand our knowledge of the universe and to be respectful stewards of our cultural sites. This is Hoku Subiono, reporting for Hikino.
Very interesting conclusion on this essay. Do we need to have an opinion on everything? And Hoku Subiono, who probably was under pressure by schoolmates in Miloli'i, it's a very pro indigenous native culture, and you said, I don't know. And you researched it. You got some really good interviews. You got people before they wouldn't talk to reporters.
Yeah. Well, what brought me to the issue was that, like, before I had a hula camp and then I met Lanakila and I got to know him. And then all of a sudden he's posting on Facebook, about this protest that's going on at the groundbreaking ceremony. And me and a couple of friends, we play hooky with the teacher, and we go up to the mountain, and we were like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And then we went up with the idea that we were just going to go over there and document. And this is something that Lanakila told me too in another interview we did. But like, it seemed very, very, very polarizing when you look at the protests. But as we were walking down after the ceremony had been interrupted and shut down, we were walking down, and we walked back with a lot of different people. Lanakila, I overheard a conversation with Lanakila with one of the scientists, and it seemed like they had a very, very understanding sort of conversation. And it was then that I was like, okay, wait, I need to know more about this. This whole thing isn't as polarizing that I was thinking, yet it's so polarized. Yet it seems so polarizing. And then when we eventually, as we were going through the story, we got so much information from different people. I got to meet people who are so passionate. Like, yes, we must build a telescope. It's such an amazing thing for science. And we also got people who were very concerned and shared their concerns about the safety and the well-being of the environment around the mountain. And some people who are still like concerned for the mountain and the environment for the mountain were still working with people who were working for the telescope because they were concerned for it. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is not a black and white issue. This is not a red and blue issue. This is a rainbow of different perspectives. And I think it wouldn't do everyone the justice it deserves if you just make it a one side versus another side kind of thing. You need to explore all these perspectives and kind of have to untie this knot individually. Every person has to untie this knot and figure out what they want to figure out. It's not something that I can just say and like say this is wrong, this is right. No, you're gonna have to figure that out yourselves.
Actually, indecision can be courageous, and it can be revealing. I mean, it can really tell you a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Hoku. Glad you're in college now, in Kona. Pono, your thoughts on this?
Well, Leslie, I've been really struggling with this tonight, this concept of truth. What excited me about this conversation, not this conversation, but the concept of Kākou. You know, and when Steve was talking about, you know, my people, your people, and Kākou is us. And you know, Colin was talking about, you know, people believe what they believe. And Donnie mentioned about going deeper, you know, quoting Miley, about going deeper. And I don't know that we go deep enough, beyond truth, you know, beyond what we think is the truth. And, you know, someone who believes there was not a Holocaust, it doesn't matter how much data and truth I'm going to get, they're not going to change. So why do I invest the time, personally, to do that? Nicole and Kuipo talked about taking it to ourselves. And how do we get unstuck? And I really believe they are really on the cusp of, you know, how do we be a community? It's what is the deeper truth? The deeper truth is that, or maybe this is a truth, that investigative reporters, you know, are used like weapons, like people have mentioned. It's a weapon, and it's fear. And what kind of trauma is that going to leave on our community? And rather than that, how do we connect as a people? And you know, that's just because so many folks come to me. And really what it is about is what Kuipo was talking about taking us to ourselves. Because we're the only ones who can create the space that allows us to be open. And how do we get to that truth about our own openness? And so I've really been struggling about this, you know, about the value of truth, but really because I thought it was about Kākou. Yeah.
Interesting, because I love questions because sometimes they are more meaningful than the answers, and the answers take longer to get to. So the active questioning is really important. There's one person here whose hand is up that I don't think has spoken before. Over here, please. Paulette?
Yes, it was me. I just wanted to point out that in the beginning of the program, you mentioned how there are people here from all backgrounds, and I think I'm one of them. I'm just listening to people saying how they feel stuck, or how they don't know what to believe, what sources, what channels. But as a Venezuelan, I think that everybody here in Hawaii or the USA, we are all privileged to have access to information. If we listen to something in the radio that we don't truly believe, we can just go watch TV and choose the channel you want. If you don't like that opinion, you just switch to another channel. We can go online, just Google it. But in my country, for example, if you see out of the window the National Guards are killing civilians and you want to know more about it, you turn on the TV and you see the president dancing with his wife. And you turn on the radio and they're just talking about projects that the government is doing. You don't have that choice to choose more about the reality. So we are all privileged here just to choose all the options we have. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Paulette. We at PBS Hawaii are often amazed at the wisdom shown in student reporting today, and this may go to what Pono was talking about earlier. I'd like to introduce you to some of teacher Leah Iwohi's media team members from Kauai High School. These students produced an award-winning video that was actually an inspiration for us at PBS Hawaii in selecting truth as tonight's Kākou Town Hall topic. Leah, Ms. Iwohi, would you please introduce your students to us?
Sure, it would be my pleasure to introduce these young ladies who are wise in their youth. We have Brooke Kana, Haven Luperjasso, Leanna Theskin, and Marlena Lang.
And let me ask you, Haven, let me ask you, what was the reason you chose to do this video essay as a group, The Fact of You?
So there's such an emphasis on being accurate and factual in everything that's produced. If you're a journalist, you want all the information to be right. On TV, you want it all to be right. And it just got me thinking, or us thinking, wow, you know, the biggest production of all is kind of your own life. That's the one thing you actually have control over, in fact, and that's the one thing that we're often not truthful about, which is very ironic and seems very backwards. And so that we kind of just wanted to address that in our video, like the fact of you, be accurate with who you are.
All right, let's lead to it. Let's hit it. The Fact of You by Kauai High School.
The word fact can be defined as a true piece of information. And in our day and age where information and messages are bombarding us from every angle, every second of the day, that's all we really want in life, truth. We are curious beings. We like to know things and we like to get answers, correct answers. As we all know from presentations and essays and reports we've made, it is of utmost importance to be factual and accurate in everything we produce. But isn't it ironic that in a world that is so conscientious about producing substantiated truth, our very selves often lack authenticity and accurate representation? We have fact-checked and weeded through the false information in the world around us, but what about the false information that lies within us? Because when I look around, I see a world that, in the midst of being busy fact-checking data, has fallen into accepting the false lies that society has force-fed to us since the moment we were born. That we have to be perfect and have it all together, that we can't be different, that appearances are everything. A lot of us are living small. We hide our imperfections and we pretend to be like others so that we will be better liked. We say things and do things because that's what everybody else does. Because that's what's expected, what's easy, what's safe. But what they don't tell you about the safe zone is that it's shallow. And in the safe zone, you will never be able to dive into the great depths of meaning and purpose that you were created to explore. Yes, you were created to dive deeper than the shallow depths of conformity, and you were created to be yourself. Not her, or him, or them, but you. Because the fact and the truth is that you are enough. Just as you are, come broken and bruised, come scarred and imperfect, you are loved, you are important, you matter. And if you can tap into this truth and let these facts transform you and set you free from the chains of conformity, then you can be a production of truth and freedom. Your life is the greatest masterpiece that you will ever produce, more important than any report, essay, or presentation. So hold it to the same standards of accuracy and truth. And let it be messy, let it be chaotic and imperfect, but most of all, let it be genuine, true to who you are, because that is who you were created to be, and that is a fact I can guarantee with 100% certainty. This is Haven Luperjasso from Kauai High School for Hiki No.
That's what we're talking about. Brooke, what kind of reaction did you get from your schoolmates when they saw this, or families in the area?
Well, I think like what Haven was saying, for our whole lives, basically, as teenagers, we've been taught to produce like essays as factual as we can, not to plagiarize, but we forget that what we are producing is often the most that's affected by, or that who we are is affecting other people. And so if what we present as ourselves isn't true, then why should other people believe what we say to them? And so when people saw this, they were like thinking, oh yeah, you know, because people are all have like fake identities, so to speak, on social media and stuff. And so when people see this, they kind of realize, oh, hey, maybe I should think about what I'm presenting to the world instead of maybe like focusing on what information, maybe focus on ourselves.
So your report had impact. Your thoughts?
This concept really stood out to our peers of being genuine and true to yourself, because we have grown up in a world where we're told to have the perfect image online. And I think this message really stood out to our peers because it's what we've grown up with, and it's a different topic, and it's a subject that really needs to be touched on.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of our peers could relate to it because we've grown up surrounded by media. Like, social media started when we were in elementary school, 6th graders. And now, as high schoolers, we're always like, you want to have the perfect image. You want to have the best body. You want to be better than everyone else. You want to be popular. You want to be what's trending. You want people to pay attention to you. But what's the point of people paying attention to you if it's not the real you? So this just really resonated, had people think about, okay, how am I being perceived by my peers? How am I showing who I am to my peers? Am I actually being myself, or am I just conforming to society?
All right, well, thank you. Great job. And you heard the adults clap. Any comments from the group about the truth, the message of truth in this video? Please, Kealani.
Aloha. I'm just really grateful for their example for all the young community. And I also wanted to add to the young community that, you know, we really need to discipline ourselves when we go to social media, because, you know, we develop these habits where, oh, we have a little break, we'll just, you know, tap into it. But, you know, thinking about, I mean, we're here in Hawaii, and we, you know, Hawaiians, we do protocols. And just like our protocols, you know, we young people need to really discipline ourselves by, you know, just like entering anybody's home, or like before you go into any space that is not, you know, that is different. When you enter the realm of the internet, social media, you need to come with a purpose, a planned purpose. You need to have that clear intention of what you are doing, and you know, use your time wisely. You're just, you know what you need to do, and, you know, just really be conscious about what you're looking at. And I also wanted to say, you know, Hawaii, you know, we're really great examples through Aloha Aina, through Kapu Aloha, and, you know, we're really showing the world, you know, our aloha. And, you know, if you're stuck in media, you know, you need to, you know, look at your neighbors and know who your neighbors are, and know that, you know, there are locals out there, a lot of people out there that are trying to create more opportunities for families to get together and practice cultural practices. We want to normalize Olelo Hawaii. You know, we're trying to do things, and if you're not seeing those things, you know, you need to get with it. And so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Kealani. We want to go to Liberty Peralta in our social media hub. One last time, Liberty, you and your team have been keeping a close eye on social media during this program. Tell us what you've been seeing online.
Well, we have quite a few comments to share with you. This one came from Facebook, from Momi, who says, the truth is way too scary for most people to look at, so they'd rather believe the lies of the media. I saw more truth on TMT through Hiki No than any other news source, and that's pretty sad. We also have this comment from Layla on Facebook, who says, with so much hate in the world today, people don't fact find, they rather fuel hate. Truth, you can't handle the truth, says Lewis on Facebook. He says, most time people don't care for the truth, they just want to believe whatever they want. Jonathan from Facebook says, media source I trust, the library. Hannibal on Twitter says, is calling out a friend who posted something you believe is untrue the best option? Sometimes I write a reply, then erase. Ka'uwehi emailed us, and she has a pretty meaty comment. She says, truth-seeking here in Hawaii is very unique compared to other states. Why? Because the high cost of living has residents spending most of their day making ends meet. They don't have the time between 2 or even 3 jobs to verify the information they consume. So how do we encourage verification? How can we as a community help people who have little to no time to think critically, dig deeper, and value the truth? And finally, we have an email from Rona in Honolulu who says, it is my hope that through this town hall conversation, we as a community will be able to live truthfully with each other in the midst of our differences of opinion.
All right, thank you, Liberty, for keeping track tonight. We also are taking phone messages, and we'll be reviewing all the comment and considering what we'll do at the next Kākou Town Hall. We're about ready to wrap up here, and I'd like to ask those who have been so kind as to join us today, did you hear any ideas tonight that might impact how you manage the information coming to you? And Leanne, I saw you with your hand up earlier. Your comments as a final wrap tonight.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of pressure. What I was gonna comment to is going back to Pono's comment about where is Kākou? And also, how do we get unstuck? I think we're doing it right here, right now. And what you did, and PBS Hawaii has done, that's gonna get us unstuck. It's gonna bring people together. It's gonna get all of us to start talking face to face with one another and not just hide behind computers and show real emotions when we debate civilly. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Other thoughts on the evening's conversation? Any part of it? Yes, Ulalia?
I came here tonight wondering if there's going to be some radically different conversation than I've had before, or that has happened in Hawaii from times past. And like Pono said, really reflecting on that word Kākou. And I sat here and I listened to folks from the west side, and I'm from the east side. I recognize that these same conversations about media and where our messages are coming from and the bubbles within which we live have been going on in this space for a long time. There was a time when in Waimanalo I would have thought real differently about somebody from Waianae. And I wouldn't have had any other media sources than those ones within my island. But our lives would have been dependent upon each other in some space and scale. And that connectivity of our reliance on each other might have changed the way we interacted, positively or negatively. So it really, to me, is, yes, there's all these bubbles, but the pace and scale at which we have to filter that information, as Ka'uwehi said, whether it's because we have so many jobs or other demands, or it's simply because the pace and scale that the information is coming, that's challenging for us. But our ancestors did it, whether it was the newspaper that came, or the radio that came, or the TV that came. And I was fascinated by how much we talked about social media, but not necessarily how much we've dealt with these similar types of changes of information that's come in. We've persevered, and it has been through getting to the Kākou, to the community, and that face-to-face with people in our neighborhood to have conversations.
So you're saying there always has been another tool. This is another big tool. Jim?
I just wanted to say that truth is, I've been chasing truth through my career as a reporter, investigative reporter, for 35, 40 years. And it's an elusive, evolving thing. It changes. Talking about the early coverage of disasters, well, it changes. It's always you think you've got the story, you think you got it nailed down, and you realize, well, I got another layer to go through. You haven't really got it. So it's something. It's a constant search. And I also wanted to stress that truth didn't begin at the beginning of the internet. There's history and things out there that happened that you need to look for beyond online.
Thank you. Pono? We have a microphone coming your way. Pass it down, as we said in the old days, and say today.
I want to believe, and I do believe, that inside each person, there's a truth, as the girls were illustrating. And it's not about for me, a debate or a negotiation. It's about where that connects with each of us, you know, and that if we go deep enough and we find that connection that is a truth, then what happens is, you know, we discover this empathy that is inside, as Ulalio was just sharing, that it really is this openness, it's available, but are we taking people to ourselves? You know, I recall that Gandhi, when he said, I'm going to go make salt, he didn't ask who's coming with me. He didn't ask or say, let's go. He said, I'm going. And over 200 miles later, there were over 40,000 people following him. And so he was following his truth. And in that truth, many, many people connected. And I just want to believe that that truth is there, but we're trying to win people, not connect with people.
Sam? Thank you.
I heard a lot of stuff about hiding behind computers tonight. And the beauty of right now, you know, in this day, is that everybody's device, yeah, most people get smartphone and I'm on the flip dumb phone, yeah. And so in your smartphone, whatever platform you're on, whether it's your iPhone, your Facebook, there's this little button called FaceTime, video chat. And if you really like learn the truth or know what someone's feeling emotionally, call them. I mean, that's the alo, you know, if you like really be face to face, call them, because you know gotta hide behind one keyboard, and which everybody bashes all the time about that, which is true. But if you really like do it, and if you're not scared, then you can call them. You know what I mean? But if not, then I mean, you know, straight up.
Thank you. Olin, right here. Thank you. This is the last comment we're going to have, Olin, and I know you're going to bring it
home, right? So I think the theme for me that stood out was the unstuck thing. So I just wanted to share sort of a story that I also get stuck in. And so this recent story was with some people from Polynesia that were living here, and like they're letting their kids sort of cross street, and they're like 2-year, 3-year-old, and I got really upset at that. And so I was involved in a group that actually got these folks together, and we talked like, what's going on, what happened? And one of the ladies that was there, when we asked them, like, you know, this is a problem for us, you're letting your kids sort of cross the street by themselves, and she was absolutely shocked. She was like, are you telling me you're not watching them? Like, what happened to community? Like, holy smokes, like, what's wrong with you guys, right? And so it really hit me in my gut. Like, I felt like crap after that, because, you know, I was guilty of having this really passionate upset about this. And I think sort of that's a theme I see in social media too, is that, you know, we need those transformative experiences so that we can properly vet information.
Thank you so much, Olin Lagan. We want to thank all of you for joining the statewide community's first Kākou, Hawaiʻi's Town Hall. To all of you from across the islands who shared your ideas with us online and on video, mahalo. And how can there be a town hall without participants like all of you? Thank you for your thoughtful and authentic comments, and thank you for helping us all to think this through. We hope you like this idea of coming together to sort through some of the concerns that we struggle with individually or as a community. Kākou, all of us, we are all in this together. I refer back to Kauai High School's Hiki No story, The Fact of You. This video essay suggests that we trust our instincts. In Hawaiʻi, we have a wisdom that comes from using our mind, heart, and yes, na'au, our gut. At our best, we show respect for others, even when we disagree with them. And as we've heard tonight, we must become our own editors. We need to be very aware of the sources of our information, to dig, so we can make informed decisions. PBS Hawaiʻi will do this again and hold another Kākou, Hawaiʻi's Town Hall. Our team is already thinking of the next subject. Let us know what you think about this kind of engagement and conversation. On behalf of the entire PBS Hawaiʻi team, we are honored to be your public television station. I'm Leslie Wilcox. Aloha. Ahui ho.
History proves it. Yeah, when you don't talk amongst, yeah, and you have two different point of view, and then you end up somewhere you don't want to be at, and you be at an impasse. So without talking, without, once again, communication, proper communication, and talking about things and relating to one another, you'll never get past your own biases. You'll never get past your own prejudices.
Through social media, we tend to congregate around like-minded people, congregate around our friends, and we tend to make friends with people who agree with us more on average. I mean, sometimes you have friends that disagree with you, but more in general, you become friends because of the fact that you agree with each other. So I don't think it's different now that we have social media. I think that's always been kind of a concern, is like you making friends with people that you agree with. Social media is just bringing that to the forefront, making it more obvious, I guess.
We need to talk face to face and, have social interactions, not social media interactions, but social interactions. I think it's very powerful and get people skills, and you just learn how to be, a better human being.
People are participating less in person-to-person groups and clubs because there's social media, and so you can sit in the privacy of your own room and virtually connect with people, but it's not the same. And I would like to see people set down their device and actually get together and talk about things.
The truth is, I have my own life. I can't even keep up with that, and I can't really get involved in everybody else's life. And like, it's so true, when it was my birthday, everybody wished me happy birthday, and so I was forced to ask my son how do I get on this so I can tell everybody thank you. But then even then, everybody else's birthday, I'm not wishing them a happy birthday, and it makes me feel bad, that I'm not on it every day. But I really don't have the time, and I really need to focus on my life and getting the things that I need to get done. So I have to just let that go, and that comes with maturity and being able to say no.
Eventually people are going to awaken to a realization of what they're doing, where their needs are being met or where they're getting their information from, what resources they're going through. We're still the youngest country, America, and relatively, you look at the situation of how much technology has grown, where we're going, when we're headed with that, we're gonna all see what's the truth and what's not. I do believe that.